It's that time of season again where I get very excited as a Leafs fan based on the way they're playing and hopeful for the playoffs. And it made me do some reflecting on my previous video, where they were and where they are today, and where potentially I see them down the road. And after reflecting and watching the video again, it made me think about some of my previous points and where I saw the insufficiencies. And honestly, I still agree with the video I made. I still have the same opinions. Like, I love the way they're playing this season. They're playing fantastic. And at the time of the video, they weren't good. They just came off a loss to Anaheim. We were all upset. And, we all had the same mindset. It was time for change. I still kind of think they need to mix things up. But we got to see how it plays out this season. They're 24-7-3 since my last video, when they were playing super poorly. Obviously a big turnaround. I don't know if I'm a jinx or not, but they just turned it around. So today I want to discuss where they're at, what they can do, and the future, and how I kind of see things playing out. So let's get into it. So the Leafs currently sit second. They're playing really well this season, 28-11-7. They're behind Boston. Nobody's catching Boston. They have a plus 34 goal differential. They're playing well. Just watching some of the games, they're always in it. They've been out of it a few times this season. Usually it's a lot more, but they've kept things close. It's not like they have got blown out in their losses. Their losses aren't horrendous. They play, and they're playing, I would say, with a purpose more so this season than in previous. And the funny thing is, I've been to multiple Leaf games this season to get my eyes on them. And watching them play, they've kept the games close. I watched them lose for like 3 games this season in person. They haven't won a game when I'm in the building. What does that tell you about me? Maybe I should avoid the building, right? But I'm watching them. They kept it close. They played hard. There's a few players that very much impressed me out there. William Nylander being one of them. Very, very good with the puck. Very quick. But, watching them play overall as a team, I think they've been really, really good. And unfortunately, we have to face Tampa Bay coming up again. It's going to happen. Whether they play us at home and then at home, whether they have home ice or we have home ice, it's inevitable. We're going to play them again. None of us are. We're not catching Boston. Tampa's not catching Boston. We're not catching Boston. They're long gone. They're like on a historic pace right now, and they're way too deep. They can have injuries, I think, and still maintain their pace. Like they're playing out of this world. And Ullmark, he's just so good. But we're likely lining up against Tampa Bay, and Tampa's not the same Tampa Bay as in the past. I think the biggest loss they had was Ryan McDonagh. He's so good on the blue line. It's a massive hole to replace. And, we'll see what Tampa does at the trade deadline. They're going to do something. I don't know what they're going to trade. They traded a lot of picks and a lot of prospects to, load up and win the cup. And that's what you're supposed to do when you're favorited, right? So it'll be interesting to see who gets what, in terms of seeding. And we'll see how it plays out. But this is likely our matchup, and we need to evaluate where we're at and what we need as Leafs fans, and as management needs to do it. We can't do it for management, but we need to evaluate what steps we need to take to ensure we defeat Tampa Bay this time around. So let's take a look at the current roster. They got rid of Geno Malgin. They got rid of Malgin for Drayden Hunt. I like Drayden Hunt. He's more of a grinder. I don't think Malgin was doing anything for this team. There was a lot of high hopes. I think the biggest loss so far was Jake Muzzin. We'll see how he plays out. I know he wasn't playing well, but he adds a dimension to the blue line that is different. And we'll get to Muzzin more in a moment. Brody's going to come back. One of my favorite additions to the Leafs, and I didn't get to touch on this at all, but Connor Timmins, I really like Connor Timmins. I really liked him in junior and in the World Juniors. He was fantastic watching him play, but I was so happy we got him. I didn't know what to expect because, his career has been up and down. He's had injuries, but he's come to the Leafs and he's played very, very well. So I think he should be a mainstay on the blue line. I know he makes mistakes here and there, but, he's learning. He's a very good mobile puck mover. So I like that addition. It adds more depth. But let's take a look at how everybody's doing this season. Matthews, not the same goal pace. Could there be something wrong there? Could he have some lingering injuries? He sat out the last couple of days, last couple of games before Boston, and he looks like Austin Matthews again in the last couple. So I would expect him to get red hot now. Nylander, career year, unbelievable. I dread looking forward to paying him. I don't know how much he's going to make. I hope it's not anywhere above 10. That's going to be tough for Leafs Nation to swallow. If we do keep him, right? You never know. Everybody's wanting him out the door, and I guess we'll see what his pay ask is. But if it's above 10, I don't know. I don't know how we can afford him. And looking overall, John Tavares, really good season, good two-way game. Mitch Marner, he's really elevated his play. Defensively, he's very, very good overall. But again, none of it matters until the playoffs. We got to see what this top six does come playoff time. Comp, I think he's a really good center, good defensive center. Offensively, he hasn't been awful for us, but same with Engvall. Personally speaking, I would prefer them as a fourth line. I think that's a really good fourth line. But they're asked to play a third line role. Kerfoot's been demoted to here. He started on the opening lineup last game. That's why it's like this right now. But he was demoted to the fourth line start. But he's going to be up and down the lineup. It's what Kerfoot does. He doesn't do anything extremely well. He just does everything. He's a jack of all trades, master of none, right? And the defense again. Riley's been a little bit off this season. I expect him to pick it up, though. I really like Liljegren and Sandin. Again, I've seen them in person, and I really like the way they play. They're really good at moving the puck. Brody's going to come back, make this blue line a lot better. And in goal, Samsonov and Murray. They've been a good tandem. I do still I said in the last video, I still have my concerns for Matt Murray. His away stats are better than his home stats. If I had to pick a starter in the playoffs right now, it would be Matt Murray, I guess. Just based on the body of work. I was listening to a radio show, and they were talking about how potentially Samsonov's number at home are insane. Their splits are insane. On the road, Samsonov is not great. And at home, he's incredible. And it's the opposite for Murray. So they were thinking about a rotation, which honestly, I'm not actually opposed to. I know some people are like, oh, if a goalie's riding hot, you ride him. But, just based on the injury history, Samsonov being injured this season and Murray, rotating them, give them a chance to rest. Maybe not putting all the stress. Maybe it's a different kind of style that we haven't seen yet. Somebody's got to try it, right? But I know there's a lot of pressure this season on the Leafs to perform. So, maybe not the best time to try it when, your jobs are on the line. But, yeah. Let's move on. I just wanted to touch on the prospects and potentially what we have in the minors. Looking at everything here, Pontus Holmberg has been in and out of the lineup. He just got sent down. I think he's going to join the Marlies. I think they have a 7-game road trip coming up. So he's going to be down, I think, for a little bit unless something happens. But I like Holmberg. Maybe in a couple of seasons, I think he's going to be a full-time. I think potentially he could be a third-line center. and looking at all the Leafs here, this has been what they've been doing in the Marlies. You know, nothing like standout. Like Abruzzesi's having a good rookie season, but nothing too much to think we have a ton of depth in the organization to easily replace some of our forwards if they get hurt. Obviously, in the organization defense, we have a lot of third line guys or third pairing guys. So there it's okay. You could argue you need top of the lineup guys for on defense, maybe another top four defenseman. You could argue that, but and in net, I'm not concerned with our depth in net beyond Murray and Samsonov. Joseph Woll is 11-0, so which is kind of surprising. But we also have Shalgren, but when he played for the Leafs this season, and for the Marlies right now, he's not playing fantastic. So I would say right now, Murray, Samsonov, Woll is probably the order of that depth chart. But, I just wanted to touch on the Marlies real quick, just to see what we have in the organization, potentially if someone gets hurt. Now let's talk about the trade deadline, okay? So we talked about where we're at, and now we're going to talk about where we need to be. So let's talk about the blueprint for the upcoming trade deadline. But first, we need to touch on cap space and cap numbers here. So currently, as it stands, the Leafs can probably maximize at the deadline about $3.678 million if they made the cuts, and this is what the lineup they're going with, right? So this is the amount of cap space they could have potentially, just based on my knowledge. I don't think you acquire, like you could waive Connor Timmins, for instance, and hope he passes through waivers. We all know he's not. That's why he's still on roster, right? So I would say if they go down that route, they have about 4.5. I don't think they should. I think he's played well, and I think he's a defenseman we should look at in the future here that we could probably sign for a Liljegren, Sandin kind of deal. Maybe 1.4 I think is going to be what Timmins is looking at for the next season on the Leafs. So I'm biased, so I love Connor Timmins. That's why I don't really want to get rid of him. But you could probably maximize around 4.6 or 4.7 if you waive him. But I think he's a good piece for the future, right? He's young still. So that's what we're looking at. But there's also another scenario to look at here, and that's Jake Muzzin. If Muzzin actually returns, because people have been saying that, it's a bad injury, it's the neck. You can't really mess around with that. That's true. But he's going to be reevaluated in late February. I think we all need to remember that. If it comes back that he's able to play and he's able to return this season, that's going to dramatically affect the Leafs' plan for the trade deadline, because Muzzin will return if he's able to. Maybe what I kind of think the Leafs might do is when he gets reevaluated, they might say he needs a few more months, and then he magically makes a return in the playoffs when there's no cap. And they pull kind of that Kucherov with Tampa Bay situation. I don't know if the Leafs can get away with that, but, a lot of people have been saying the injury is bad, but that's just, do I expect him to return? Probably not. Your neck is super serious. I wish him nothing but good health, but it's just something to consider going into the trade deadline, and I'm sure Leafs management, we may not see a big move until, I believe the trade deadline's March 3rd. I think in late February, when do you think that, around the 25th, maybe, they'll evaluate him, and then they gotta make a call on what they can or can't do, right? So that's just a scenario to look at, potentially, for the deadline. So Kyle Dubas, this is important to note. Kyle Dubas's job is on the line. If he gets bounced in the first round, I don't see him returning. So he's probably going to take a massive swing at the deadline. I don't see him just I don't see him tinkering. I don't see him bringing in like a Lyubushkin. You know what I mean? I don't. I see him bringing in a name, at the very least, one name. Right? I don't think he's gonna, like, he has nothing to lose. Like, you know what I mean? In this situation, like, he knows what the offseason could potentially face for him. His contract's up as well. So why not, if you're Kyle Dubas, you're looking at this saying, okay, my team, they're playing well, they're keeping the games close. Why not go in and push all your trade chips in and make a huge splash at the deadline? So I think that's something to consider. Like, do I want him to sell the farm for this trade deadline? Well, it depends what he brings in. Rentals, I don't love rentals, but it depends who the rental is, right? But can he take a massive swing? I think he has to, right? Everything's on the line for this guy. So let's take a look at all three positions: goaltender, defense, and forward. Do I think the Leafs need to do anything in goal? No. Unless it's like a massive, massive upgrade, which we all know is not going to happen. I think they're just going to roll with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. If one of them gets hurt or they need to rest, you can see Woll or Kallgren in the lineup. I don't think this position's going to be changing at all. I think they're going to ride with it. Unless Murray goes down and holds the groin, I think maybe we could see a move for a goaltender in that situation. But as it stands right now, no, I don't. They've been playing well enough that one of them is going to take hold of the net, or they could just split, right? I don't think they need to do anything there. On defense, this might be a little bit of a take, but I know some people have been always saying that the Leafs need to add another top four defender. Do I think they need to add another top four defender? It depends who it is, really. I think they have tremendous depth. They should not bring in a depth piece. Like, I heard Luke Schenn. I heard he's like, I haven't seen Luke Schenn play this season, but a lot of people have been saying he's been playing very well. I've heard that name floated. Like, I feel like that's another bottom pairing defenseman for the Leafs. He's not playing in the top four. And then there's the Chychrun factor, but how much are you giving up for Jakob Chychrun? I don't think the Leafs kind of even have the assets to do that, unless they're selling 2 firsts and Matthew Nyes. I don't see that situation happening for the Leafs. But this is how it looks. I don't personally, I just don't think they need to mess with it too much. They have a lot of depth. They'll be okay. Now, this is where I think the Leafs need some help. So first, I want to review the second, third line left wing I think they need. I would like them to get a first line left wing, right? I think everybody would. But I just don't see that happening. I see maybe a second, third line left wing coming in to help them. But if you look at it right now, Järnkrok, he's played well up there with Tavares and Marner. Bunting, I think he's a staple with Matthews. And then you look down the lineup and it's not really good. I think if you can get a second line, especially a second line left wing, to move down Järnkrok, even if you somehow pull off a first line left wing, I just don't see that happening though. If you could somehow pull that off, it would push everybody down and it would look a lot better. But I do think that second, third line left wing is a spot the Leafs need to address if they want to go on some sort of run. Here's some options. We all forget Matthew Knies coming up. He's eligible for a contract once his season ends. He can sign and step into the lineup immediately. Now, a lot of people have this guy really, really hyped, okay? I know he's a big body, he uses body well, he's a good forechecker. I don't know if some people are expecting Bunting or Hyman right out of the gate. I don't think that's a fair comparison. But if you sign this guy, they have that one extra roster spot open for him. They have 49 contracts, I believe, won that contract slot. I don't know if he could step into the lineup and be an effective contributor right away. He's very young still, but he's an option for sure. Maybe you get a big name that's not a left wing, and you bring him into the lineup, and then you sign Knies, and then he could slot down on the third, fourth line, right? That's potentially an option. But I'm not completely sold on this being like him stepping in and producing, right? A lot of people have that expectation. I think he's a kid, and I don't think we should have that expectation. I want him to pan out, so take your time with him. Don't rush him, and don't put him in situations that won't help him. You want him to develop. His long-term future is more important than the present. Another name, James Van Riemsdyk. I think this would be funny. He's on the market. His contract, $7 million. Philly has to retain half for anything to happen. He has familiarity with the Leafs. He could still score. He's very good in front of the net. He could help that second power play unit, or even move up to the first and replace Bunting. He's big. We've seen it. We know what he's about. But that the question lingers there, right? Do we want a repeat of JVR in Toronto? Do we want that as Leafs fans? We didn't get we got a lot out of him while he was here, but we know come playoff time what to expect. Do we want that? Or do we want something different, right? But I think he'd play well in the Leafs lineup. That's the only point I need to make. Second, third line role for sure. And then Max Domi, that's another left wing out there right now that's been floated to Toronto. His contract's $3 million. He's had a good year with Chicago. His defensive, his defense has been questioned at times, but playing on the Blackhawks, elevated role. He comes to Toronto, slides. He doesn't need to be the guy. It'd be a good story for us here in Leafs Nation with his dad being Thai, right? Of course, but another thing about Max Domi here is what concerns me about bringing him in. I don't want him to think that when he comes here he has to be Ty Domi. I know he knows Ty's loved. He's not an enforcer. You come in to do the job. You come in to score. I don't want him to think, oh, he's a goon all of a sudden because his name's Domi. Just play the role, right? But it's another option. I don't know how much you'd have to give, but it's another option. And now let's look at the second need I think they need up front. I think they need two forwards. I think they need two forwards that can play real well. And I think that third line center role, I think we need to move Kampf down to the fourth line. Kampf is very effective at what he does. He's a very good shutdown forward. And I think him on the fourth line playing that role is what we need right now. And if we can get another left wing to produce offense and another center to, play a solid two-way game, but also orchestrate the offense, I think that would do the Leafs wonders, and I think they will definitely elevate come playoff time if they add these two particular positions. But let's see what options I gave. Some are more realistic than others. Let's go through them. The first one being Nick Bjugstad. His contract's $900K, which is very, very good. He's 6'6". He's got 20 points on Arizona. I don't know if that's because he has a elevated role on Arizona, because, you know, they have absolutely nothing there. But I think slotting him into a third line role, you got the size. I think he'd do very, very well for the Leafs. I don't know what the acquisition cost is going to be for this guy, to be clear. But at $900K, it lets you have more flexibility at the deadline too. So you could add, like, for me, like, I know a lot of people have been looking at Patrick Kane. Like, oh, you know, bring him in. You know, maybe that gives you flexibility to you know, because he's $900K, add a Patrick Kane. But, like, I just don't see that happening at all. But, you know, bringing in that a need you have on the third line, Bukestad, I think he could fill that role. Monahan, I threw this name out there. He's hurt right now. He'll be back apparently in the next week or so. But, you know, third line role, 6'2". You know, he's played in an elevated role in Calgary. But third line role, I think, is perfect for Monahan. His contract's 6'3", 7'5", so like, they're going to have to retain half for the Leafs. But again, I just don't see the Habs and the Leafs working something out. I don't see and I really don't see the Leafs helping the Habs in their tank for Bedard. I really think the Leafs don't want the Habs to get to Bedard. I don't think anybody in the East wants the Habs to get Bedard, or any team in the East, you know, wants Bedard to go to the East. I think we want him to go West. But I don't, like, I think Monahan, he would fit the role really well. I just don't see it happening, but it's an option. You know, the Habs traded Pukanets to us. You never know, right? You never know. And there's obviously acquisition costs too. And if it's high, I just don't see the Leafs paying, like, Montreal to help their future. So I don't know. This one, I threw it out there as an option, but it's not realistic. Barbashev, more of a realistic option. Barbashev right now makes $225. Last season he had 60 points. He was very good. This season he's he's fallen off. But I think in a third line role again, sort of like Bukestad, I think he'll fit in really well in the Leafs. He's prototypical right there. 6'1". I think on that third line, I think he'll chip in I think he'll chip in offensively. So I think this wouldn't be a bad ad at the price. What it will take to get him, again, I have no idea. And now let's go to another, I think, non-realistic option, Jonathan Toews. I think the contract, it's 10+ million. I think 10.5. I don't. This one I don't see happening. I don't see it. But I think adding that playoff pedigree in the lineup, you know, on a third line role, can move up and down the lineup too. Just having that experience, leadership, that presence in the locker room. Again, I don't see this happening though. I don't. I don't. They got to retain half, and even then I don't think it, unless we're giving Hull back, or I just don't see it happening. But again, the Blackhawks, if Toews decides to move, he will choose where he wants to go. Like, there's no doubt that it's a Giroux situation. And I think the same with Patrick Kane. They're going to obviously try maximizing return, but whatever those two decide, they get to control their destinies. And they got a no movement clause. Okay, then there's Bo Horvat. So Horvat's definitely not a third line center. But, you know, you're adding pedigree in the lineup. He's currently making 5.5, so they can retain. If there's going to be retention, the price is going to go up. So the Leafs are going to have to pay a premium. You know, Horvat this season, career high in goals. He's going to hit it. He's one behind there. You know, he's going to chip in offensively. In a third line role, in that slot. I don't see him playing third line on the Leafs though. That's the thing. I like he'll move to a winger up front, or what he'll do is slot second line center, and Tavares will move to the wing maybe. But that's the way I kind of see it playing out. I like, but I don't see like the acquisition cost. I think it's just going to be too high for Bo Horvat. We'll see. It's a brilliant fit, right? Brilliant fit. Ontario guy, scores, leadership. I think the one thing is he doesn't have playoff experience. He's got that one season, but we'll see. You never know what Dubas is thinking. If he wants to take a massive swing, this would be it. And finally, the guy I really want is Ryan O'Reilly. I think he'd be a perfect slot. You slide right into that third line. Not having a fantastic season. I think the acquisition cost, he's making $7.5 million. They can get that down to $3.75 at half retention. I think he is what we need, but I will say his situation does worry me a little bit in comparison to Foligno. So I wouldn't be willing to pay a Foligno price for him, unfortunately. It may cost that, but I think he's exactly what they need. Third line center, can score, can defend, and has that leadership, and can move up and down the lineup. I think he would do wonders for this team. But again, price, I don't know. I don't know if we can afford him. And another thing too, St. Louis is like back into the hunt now. When there was a lot of discussions around Tarasenko and O'Reilly, they were out of it. But now they've crawled back into it. They're both hurt. When they come back, it could be an own rental kind of situation to help bolster their lineup. But it ultimately depends on what St. Louis management is thinking as well, because they could think, hey, we don't have enough here to win the Stanley Cup, and we're on kind of the edge right now. Let's sell these two, reload, and build for next season, because they have a lot of really young, good guys like Thomas and Kyrou, right? So it ultimately depends on what St. Louis management is thinking here, but I think O'Reilly, if he is on the block and he is potentially get moved, he'd be a perfect fit for the Leafs. And yeah, that's my thoughts here. I think the Leafs need two forwards. I think third line left wing who could score. I think that's pressing. We don't really have that depth. And I think a third line center as well. Some of the names I just mentioned. And I think it's important to note, when Tavares went down against Montreal, we had a very difficult time replacing that player in our lineup, because at the time the Leafs didn't have center depth either, right? So I think it's important to. I think the area of most importance is to add that third line center, right? They need it. It pushes Kampf down and it moves Kerfoot back to the left. I think that would be massive for the Leafs. Do I think Dubas can pull it off? I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know where he's going with it. I don't know how he looks at this team and the needs. I've heard all sorts of outlandish rumors on what they might do. But like I said, I think this is what they need to do if they want to have a hope against Tampa Bay. Beyond Tampa, do I think they can win? If they make the necessary changes and they actually get a third line that could score, maybe. But I'm not willing to get my hopes up until they make some major additions here. We'll see, right? I'm not optimistic yet, I will say, about their playoff chances, but a couple of additions that might change. So we'll see. And I hope they make some moves to really shore some things up.